Hello and happy December. My name is Hunter Goodman. I'm a faculty member, assistant professor for community workforce and economic development at the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service. And it is an honor to work with you. I congratulate you on taking this grant writing course through the University of Arkansas Hope Texarkana. You are doing the right thing to further your own abilities for writing grants. And it is my privilege to pick up where you've left off and give you a little bit more information as part of the course that fills out your experience as a grant writer. So what I'm going to do today is I actually teach grant writing all across the state of Arkansas for community-based organizations. And I'm going to use that curriculum that we use for extension with you today. I'm going to do a couple of things. Normally the course is about 6 hours long. We're not going to do 6 hours today. What we're going to do is we're going to break it into a couple of segments. And so I'm going to start off by talking about mission and SMART goals and some of the basics around grant writing. I'm then going to talk a little bit about really understanding your community and how that drives your grant writing and partnerships, how that fits in. And then I'm going to talk about logic models and evaluation. I think those three pieces, based on reviewing your materials to date, would really round out your experience. I will also say that you are always welcome to reach out to me, and I will give you my contact information throughout this. My email, let me just say it right now, is hgoodman@uada.edu. And my phone number is 501-804-0679. You can call me at any time. That is my personal cell phone number. So as you're going through this, if you have questions, feel free to call me. Let's get started. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint. I'm going to walk you through it, and hopefully at a pace where you can stop, you can go back, you can do things as you go along to help you in the learning experience. So to start off with, I'm going to share the PowerPoint here, and here we go. So first of all, again, grant writing for nonprofit and community-based organizations. The way we're going to go through this is actually something we do as part of our Center for Rural Resilience and Workforce Development. And we believe that for communities to thrive, as communities thrive, particularly rural communities in Arkansas, that it's really important that everyone has the ability to support, to grow, and to flourish their organizations in their communities. So through the center, we provide grant writing, training, and technical assistance. The curriculum that I'm going to use is something that is with colleagues across the southeast, the southern part of the United States through the SRDC, the Southern Rural Development Center. So I give full credit to my colleagues for the curriculum, and I have the ability to teach it because I was one of the co-authors of it. So when you think about this, again, normally I would be a very conversational approach. Given the nature of what we're doing right now, it's not going to be conversational because you're watching me. But this is kind of the flow of what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be doing it. So as we get started, first of all, I want you to think about when you are doing grant writing, you have to start first and foremost with what matters. So what do you believe to be very important? What fits your mission? What has strong community support, and what fills a significant need? So in other words, it's really important sometimes you see a grant come through and you think this could work. And sometimes, yeah, that happens. But in an ideal setting, you should always start with what is my mission? What am I trying to accomplish? Is that mission something that my community wants? And let that drive you through the process. That will set you up for success. And when you start looking for a grant, first of all, you have to focus. You have to focus on your mission and where you're going. And as you begin to write a proposal, you have to first know who you are as an organization and an entity, when and why you should look for grants, from whom you should look for grants. And so the reason I say that is because let's say you need money in 6 months. Well, if you need money in 6 months, a federal grant is probably not for you. Federal funding takes a while, and the processes of all of that, you're just not going to see it in 6 months. You're probably looking more at charitable funding or foundation funding for a quick turnaround. Whereas if you're looking 2 years out, then you can begin to plan for federal or other types of sources that build on that. And again, that kind of drives your search. When you think about funding, and this was in some of your slides from your fellow instructor, but really funding is federal, state, and foundation. When you think about those different funding sources, those are usually the big ones that you go for, and that was covered in some of your earlier material. I want you to focus on a SMART goal. So as you're going through and thinking about where you are at this point in the course, a SMART goal is really, it falls into these things. It's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time framed. Okay, SMART goal. Why does that matter? The reason a SMART goal matters is because when you're talking to a funder, it's really easy to say, I need money for whatever, for a building, for staff, or something. But for a funder, from a funder's perspective, they want to know that it's not just for a thing, right? It fits to your mission. It has a purpose that's very clear, that can be really measured and shown as working, and that it's within a certain time frame. These are all important things to a funder. So as we look at this, again, these are some of the things about a SMART goal. And first of all, a specific is, what do you want to achieve? And where will you focus your efforts? That's the specific part. The second one is measurable. So how do you plan to measure progress toward your goal? How will you know that you have arrived at whatever you're trying to accomplish? What the money is for, what you're doing with the money. Attainable, do you have the resources to achieve the goal? So do you have what you need to do it? Are there barriers that might prevent you from achieving this goal? Relevant? Is it important to your community? Does it matter, or does it bring benefit? If it doesn't, then it may be a great thing, but it's probably not gonna matter to the funder. It has to be that benefit to the community. And time frame, when do you want to achieve your goal? What is the target date for accomplishing the goal? So these are the questions that I want you to ask yourself. And for any funding opportunity that you're going after, meaning, what are you wanting? Why are you wanting it? How do you know it's successful? These are the questions that you need to ask yourself before you do anything else. So I'm going to give you some examples, and then I want you to actually write a SMART goal. So here we go. A couple of examples. First of all, when you write a SMART goal, these are some examples. Now, these are just examples of types of things. Keep in mind, I work for the Division of Agriculture. So one of them might be new business startups. That might be your goal. Or maybe you're focusing on effective use of a family budget. Or maybe workforce readiness skills. Or maybe it's broadband access. Whatever it is, like, what's the big topic, right? That's your first step. What's your topic? What are you focusing on? What's the issue or the need that you're focusing on? That's going to be first. Now, these are two examples. The first example is for a program. Let's say you had a program you were writing money for. That'd be number one. Number two would be for you personally. And I find when I'm teaching grant writing that it's really helpful to have an example for your organization and that you can personally relate to. For purposes of your own SMART goal and for practicing, you can choose whichever one is easier for you right now to really learn the skill of SMART goals. It's not a right or wrong answer. So first of all, for a program, let's say at the program's completion, at least 70% of participants will report gaining an understanding of how to save money each month as measured by pre and post surveys. So see that? At the program's completion, so that's the end goal, at least 70% of participants will report gaining an understanding of how to save money each month as measured by pre and post surveys. Okay, so that would be a way, that's a SMART goal based on a program. Okay, now let's look at a SMART goal based on a personal goal. I would like to increase my successful receipt of grants by increasing my approval rating from 2 grants per year to 5 grants per year. And I can achieve this goal by making small increases in my grant writing approach each week. So with that one, you see that the good thing about that one is that it's about your goal is to successfully increase how many grants you receive as a grant writer. And the way you're going to do it is increasing from 2 grants to 5 grants per year that are being approved. And the strategy, the way you get there, is you make small increases in your grant writing approach each week. So that could be a SMART goal. Now, when you start writing your SMART goal, some of you are going to have a sheet of paper that's literally going to answer every question. So you're going to say specific, colon, and you're going to answer those questions. And you're going to say measurable, colon, and you're going to answer those questions. And you will have a paragraph. And that is perfectly fine. In time, though, you'll want to get it down into one of these example type formats. And the reason is what you're trying to do with a SMART goal. Some of you may have heard of an elevator speech or an elevator pitch, which is you say your mission in such a way that from getting from the 4th floor to the 1st floor, if you're in an elevator with someone, with a funder or donor, you would be able to tell your story of your organization, its purpose within that period of time. That's an elevator pitch or elevator speech. When you think about a SMART goal, if you're talking with a funder, you want something that very clearly tells them what you're trying to do, why it matters, and when it's going to be. That success is there, and it's not just giving you money to give you money. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I want you to turn to the form. There's actually a SMART goal handout that you should have with this material, and I want you to try it. I'm going to pause just a minute as if we were in the room together. I want you to look at that SMART goal handout. I would ask you to pause the recording and I want you to try it. Take about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and try it on your own, and then start the video back. You'll feel in the video, I'm going to pause just a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and continue the presentation. So now, if you will go to the SMART goal handout, pull that up, and write your SMART goal. At the top of the handout is this, where it says specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time framed. The second part of the handout is blank, where you can fill in the details. So do that now. Take a few minutes and pull that information. Okay, welcome back. So you paused for a few minutes and you took a look at the SMART goals handout. So if I was in the room with you, I would ask you for your questions. Again, you're welcome to email me at hgoodman@uada.edu with any questions or call me. I do want to address a couple of the questions that I typically get from folks in the sessions that I do across the state. One of the questions that I typically get is, I just want to get a tractor to help out on the farm that's producing community gardens. What does that have? How do I do a SMART goal with that, right? Well, the answer I would say is you go back and you think about how are you going to use that tractor? So again, here we go. What does that tractor have to do with the fact that you can provide high quality food for people in the community? How do you know that people in the community, that providing that food is important, that locally grown food? And how do you know that that tractor in creating that food is a success? That's the story you're trying to tell. What you need is the tractor to make that happen. And we'll get to that a little bit in a little bit around the logic model. But that would be something, even if you feel like you just need a piece of this to make your goal happen, you still have to articulate your goal. The other thing I sometimes get is that it feels kind of overwhelming trying to break it down or put it all in one. Often it feels like in the beginning, especially when you're doing a SMART goal from the start, you end up with something that answers all those questions. That's okay. Part of this exercise and part of the reason you do this in the beginning of grant writing is it really helps you to center your thoughts and put it all, just get it out of your head and put it on paper and begin to pull out the parts of what you're saying that tell the story of why you want this thing or why you want this funding and how it relates to what you're trying to accomplish. Even if you don't ultimately have something as pretty as this, you will in time. And I will tell you, preview of coming attractions, that when you get to a point where you're actually going to write your narrative, your grant, every grant asks for a narrative, and the narrative starts with a project summary. Your SMART goal will become your project summary, is where you're headed. It's going to be that thing in the very beginning that tells the reader, aka the funder, about what you're trying to do, why it matters, and when it's going to be. Okay? So with that, with SMART goals in mind, and again, you're welcome to reach out to me at hgoodman@uada.edu with any questions. I'm going to move into success and looking ahead. So, grant writing. One of the things about grant writing, grant writing is writing for money, yes. But grant writing is really a process by which you bring all the pieces together in your community and your organization in such a way that you can make things happen, right? You have to have money to make things happen, and we all get that. But it's not just about the money. It's about how do we really build on something that impacts your community. So when you think about it, first of all, you should always identify local assets. So what is it that you need in your community? What is it you want to do, right? Then who may be able to help you? So in your community, who might be able to help you with what you're trying to accomplish? And who shares your interest? Now, why does that matter? You're like, Dr. Goodman, I don't get it. Like, why is that important? Well, funders do not like to fund more than one thing in a community that could be duplicative, right? They want their resources to be spread out in ways targeted and yet spread out in ways that make an impact. Additionally, they may love you as an organization, but ultimately they're funding you because you're able to address something that needs to be addressed in your community. And none of us do the work alone. We may have one organization that's doing something, but we do it in partnership with others. So, what do you need? Who may be able to help? And who shares a common interest with you? Need to be guiding questions in your process. And I teach a process. Everything I do is built on a process called asset-based community development. Asset-based community development, or ABCD, is it's really a philosophy of community development that really came about, or was named, was given its research focus in the 1980s, around 1988, from Dr. Jody Kretzmann and Dr. John McKnight, who were at Northwestern University at the time. And they taught, it was in the late 1980s. And they focused on the fundamentals of ABCD, is that if you think about a glass that's half full, you can think about that glass as half empty, meaning all these problems, my organization or my community has all these issues and these problems. Or you can think about it as all the good things in your community and the people, the abilities that you have. And I guarantee you that if you look at it from a glass half full perspective, you will see incredible possibilities. Whereas if you go in with a negative mindset of all the problems, you're going to see more problems. And when we think about asset-based community development, you discover what's strong and not what's wrong. You place community at the center of local decision-making. You activate individual and community participation, and you build on community leadership. You strengthen local connections. And grant writing at its best is when you work with local connections and you build. You don't do things in isolation. So this is a little bit of an approach. Again, I'm not saying here that either one of these is the only way to go, or that one is better than the other. That is not what I'm saying. But I do think it's helpful when we think about grant writing, social service model is often the way we think, right? We think on needs. We respond to problems. We look at things we can provide, or charity orientation. We emphasize agencies and individuals, and our goal is to provide services. Programs are the answer, and that is often the way funding, especially federal funding, works. But if we think about things on the front end, from an asset-based community development approach, we focus on assets, we focus on opportunity in the community. How does grant writing and what we're wanting to do with our organizations invest in our community? How do we work together with others in terms of associations and community? And our goal is ultimately for the community, for self-determined communities. It's not about someone coming in from somewhere else and telling us what to do. It's about building on the relationships. Our people in our communities and our organizations, the people we work with, have the answers. They just might need an extra hand to get there. And people have the ability to make their own decisions. So that's kind of an ABCD approach. I realize a lot of things are from a social service perspective, but I think there's a win-win in looking at both lenses. And I personally operate from an ABCD approach. Everything we do with our center is through an ABCD approach. So why does that matter with grant writing? So a social justice oriented philosophy of grant writing is important. You're not solving problems for people, but with people. Language is important, and authentic community engagement is really hard on a deadline. So if you're really focused with your organizations on community engagement, improving your community, you have to back up and not just do it based on when the grant becomes available, but based on planning and engaging people. So I want to invite you to think about this. When you think about really generating ideas for your grants and your grant making and your grant writing, this is the way we all, a lot of times, think about things of a traditional approach. We may engage people we work with and ask a bunch of questions. So we're the top triangle, the people we're serving, we're asking them questions. This is an ABCD approach. You have the triangles, which are we're on the outside, and people who are part of the solution are talking together. You might think of a room where people are at round tables talking to each other with some guided questions. You're on the edges listening. And this is not an ABCD process where you're in the conversation. That's not the same. You're not going to get the same kind of answers when you do that. And these are some questions and some examples of how sometimes the questions that you ask someone could determine the answers. So if you're coming from kind of a what programs need to happen, what are the problems, those kinds of things, you're going to get those kinds of responses. Whereas if you think about, how do we expand your work? How do we really help you feel alive and engaged? How do we support you? You're going to get answers that are more engaged in the way that how people can be a part of the solution. So I want you to think about partnerships. As we think about partnerships and grant writing are really important. It's important to think about not just a partner in name only, like, oh yeah, Walmart down the street, they're great. They're here in the community. But what are you doing with Walmart? How is Walmart supporting you? Or maybe you are a food bank and the local hospital, great partner, right? Great in the community, but how are you connecting what you're doing with the food bank with healthy living with the hospital? Those are really important. And then it's always important with partnerships. You start partnership building way before you have a grant. So when you go to someone and say, hey, I need you to join with me because I got this grant next week and I think it'd be good, they're likely going to say, eh. But if you start a year in advance, I am looking for funding, but I'm really looking for partners who believe what we believe, right? Who value what we value. And we may be able to work together and help each other. That's a different kind of conversation. So when you think about partnerships, be clear what you need, what the responsibilities are, what the contribution is, what the time is, and the expectations. Those are really important things to think about partnerships. And I want you to take a minute and write down on a sheet of paper. There's actually in your files or in your tools for this that was sent out with my materials, there should be a partnership matrix. So I want you to pull out that partnership matrix. As you look at the partnership matrix, it will look something like this. So it'll have a circle in the middle, which is you or your organization. And then around the edges, So think about these little circles coming out. I want you to write the partners that you already have. Now, they may or may not be local businesses, federal agencies, local agencies, etc. It may not fit these buckets, and that's okay. But I want you to write out the partners that you already have. So I'm going to be quiet a minute, and I want you to do that. Write the partners in those little bubbles that you already have. Okay, if you need to pause me and then start it back after you fill out the sheet, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to keep going. So when you think about this, who do you collaborate with in your network? And what are their assets, contributions, and resources? So that's when you're doing these bubbles, I want you to look down at those names you put on the sheet of paper and think about, who do you collaborate with? Are they within your direct network, or maybe they're outside? So maybe it's in your county, maybe it's outside of Hempstead County or outside of Howard or Little River or wherever you are. But how does that connect, right? And what do they bring? What do you bring? So normally I would do a break. So we're going to just keep on cruising. What I'd like you to do is to go down to the second page. So on that partnership matrix, there is a sheet that looks like a grid. And it's got the partner name, a place for partner name, and it's got how does it benefit them, and how does it benefit both of you? I want you to do that. And the reason I want you to do that is because every partnership, it's not really a partnership unless both parties win. So if you're going to partner with someone around a grant, if they're just doing all the stuff for you and you're not giving anything to them, that's not really a win-win. Now, you might say, Dr. Goodman, does that mean I have to give them some of the money? Well, maybe. But it also may be the project, the SMART goal. How does what you're trying to accomplish, how does that help them? So if you're, let's say you're creating a program, an after-school program for kids, and you're increasing retention rates in schools. You're going to partner with the local school system. Yes, you may have to share some funding, right? But what's the benefit to the school? How is it a win-win that school's going to get something they don't already have from you? Maybe you just need space from that school. They can provide you with a room. For you, that's the space you need to lead that program. And for them, it's a program that they don't have to pay for, that provides something good for their kids and helps them with retention, which is an issue for schools. See what I mean? Win-win. Now, on that second page there, I want you to list partners that you may not already have. And I want you to go back to your SMART goal and go to those things that you feel like would make that SMART goal happen. So who are the partners that could help you with that SMART goal? And what benefits them, but then what benefits both of you? What's the win-win? Again, if you need to pause me for a few minutes to do that, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to be quiet for just a minute, then I'm going to keep going. Okay, now as you work through that, why is all this important? Dr. Goodman, why? I'm in a grant writing class. Why have I had to do all this? Well, the reason why it's important is because, first of all, it's the fundamentals of why you should really write a grant. Grant writing in itself it's not about the grant writing. It's about grant writing as a means to help you make a greater impact in your community. So what you're trying to get at here, we started with mission and vision and focus. We looked at our SMART goals. Then we moved into looking at thinking about the assets, the strengths, the partners, the things that we have in our community that we may already be able to lean on, so we don't have to ask for it in the grant, right? And then who can we work with that helps us do the work better? Now, all that, like, what do you have? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Plus, what do you have? Equals what resources are missing that will keep me from being successful. So what do I not have that I cannot leverage in any other possible way? That is what guides your grant search. So when you think about where do I, like, how much money do I ask for? What exactly do I ask for? I know I need to do X, but what do I actually ask for? What you ask for is the resources that you can't get any other way that you need to be successful. That's what you're trying to accomplish. And when you go through the what do you want to do and what do you have, what falls out is what you're looking for. Okay. I want you to turn to finding potential grants. I'm going to run through this super fast, and then we're going to end this video and go to another video. Finding potential grants, I know you covered that with your previous instructor. You did a great job of that. I do want you to think about, when you're thinking about potential grants, certainly you're looking for a request for proposal, you're looking where to start, you go with what is your overarching goal and what entity aligns with your goal. That's very important when you start searching. So remember in the beginning, we talked about, is it a foundation? Is it, is it a family foundation? Is it a corporate foundation? Is it a federal government? Is it a state government? What makes sense for what you want to accomplish? And that helps you because then you're not searching for everything that funds for hunger. You're searching for those things that fund hunger that might be private foundations or that might be corporate foundations or might be federal. It just helps you to streamline when you start thinking about funding and looking for funding. There's three things to think of. First off, there's always the good old-fashioned online search, and there's some ways to do that. But also your network is a great way to think about grant searching. It's often tempting to think about, I don't want to talk to the other food bank in town because they're also going after the same funders. Maybe, but really you're all trying to address the same challenge in your community. It's not about competition. Think about it as collaboration to how you meet the goal, and just sharing resources. Just because they may share with you who else might be out there that funds hunger doesn't mean you're both going to get it, right? Or maybe in understanding where they're going, you could hook arms and do the work even better. The third thing is outreach units. So for example, in the state of Arkansas, let's say you're doing something with outdoors. Well, Outdoor Rec, the Department of Outdoor Recreation, is fantastic. And they can tell you, they're an outreach unit for the state, and they may very well be able to tell you of some resources that you might be able to turn to. Or the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, they have a CDBG program, Community Development Block Grant. It's great, but it's not for everybody, but they might know, it's a very specific, but they might know of other things that would make sense for you. So those are three things to start with. And when you think about really local and foundation grants, really tap into your network. That's a great way to go. I also want to encourage you to look at grants.gov if you haven't already, if you're looking at federal funding. And I'm going to run through a couple slides quickly around grants.gov, and you are welcome to call me and email me, hgoodman@uada.edu, with any questions. So first of all, and the grants.gov has changed the color scheme on me since I did these slides. So the colors are a little different, but the information's the same. When you pull up grants.gov and you go up here to keyword, you can enter your keyword, meaning hunger or homelessness or childcare or arts or whatever your broad topic is. You put it there. Then when you go to the page, you're going to see a link that says search grants. You click on search grants, and it's going to take you to something that looks like this. When you see keyword up there, again, put that in: hunger, art, childcare, whatever. What's your big bucket? And as you're doing that, you come down on the side and you see all these different check boxes. Okay, so the check boxes, don't let that intimidate you. Those check boxes basically allow you to begin to filter what exactly you're looking for. So for example, Forecasted means funding federally that has been approved. It's coming, but it hasn't been released yet. Posted means it's available, it's out there. So you'd want to check forecasted and posted because that's things that are now, right? Closed means those funding opportunities that are no longer, they're up there, but the date may have passed. And archived means that it's things that have happened and have been funded in the past, but they're not active now. They weren't immediately closed, but they have existed in the past. And the reason why you look at archived is because a lot of funding federally comes back around. So just because it's not available right now doesn't mean it won't be in a year. So as you're thinking long term, that's a good place to go back and try to understand what type of funding you could plan for through the federal government. And then understanding not everything is a guarantee. And then when you look at funding instruments, I might do all of these to start with, again, just as you're learning the system. But if you want to narrow in, these are different types of fundings. And most likely for nonprofits, you're looking at a grant. So we click on grants, cooperative agreements, other procurement. Those are contractual, otherwise agreements, which you could absolutely do. But if you're getting started, I would probably stick with grants. And then eligibility, again, I would probably do the big bucket, but if you want, you could click on nonprofit. If you scroll down there, you can see the nonprofit option. So you can kind of see here, this example, I put drought in, and then it gives you on the left, see how I've kind of checked the different buckets, and you can see on this right-hand side right here, how it's beginning to populate an option for you of what this looks like. And the more we do, right, the more populated it's going to become. So ultimately, when we keep going and we refine the search, let's look at this example here. This opportunity number, and this is the way all the federals are going to look. You're going to have an opportunity number, which is basically how it defines a particular grant opportunity. It's going to tell you what it is. That's the title. It's going to tell you who, which is USDA in this case. It has been posted, and it gives you the dates of when it was posted and when it's due. Now, what does all that mean and why is that important? Federal grants and grants.gov is a great resource. Even if, you're not quite ready for federal grants, a lot of the other grant searches that you can do, and there are other support services out there for searching for grants. There's some you can pay for of different kinds. There's also some of the ones, there's lots of them. There's a grantstation.com. There's Foundation Center. There's something through Candid, which is related to Foundation Center, and there's a whole lot of others. And people ask me all the time which one is my favorite. I don't have a favorite. There's no such thing. I think you choose the resources that are best for you. I'm not suggesting that you even have to pay for something. You can do this in a lot of different ways. But those are services that are out there that some people find helpful. But I think there's different ways you can do it. There's different ways to find the information. So, and this is some of the information that's on grants.gov that you can work with. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to stop share. And I would like for you to really just take a minute over the last 45 minutes or so, possibly an hour, depending on how long you gave it a break to do your work. I've asked you to do a couple things. So first of all, I've asked you to really think about your mission and what you're trying to accomplish and letting that guide your grant search. So what are you trying to accomplish? And then putting that in a SMART goal, beginning to articulate exactly what you're trying to accomplish, why it matters, and what the time is of what you're trying to accomplish. SMART goal. Then I asked you to think about partners, assets, and to think about things from a strengths-based orientation. Now, what I'm asking you to do is think about grant writing as a long-term process. I am not naive. I realize that sometimes we've just got to get money on the door, and you're like, Dr. Goodman, I've got to get it in next month. I don't have time for all that planning stuff. Get it. But ultimately, grant writing is a long-term process. And these steps of thinking about your partnerships and being very intentional about that helps you in the long term to think about and to gain funding. So again, your partners, your assets, thinking about bringing people to the table long before you need the money. And then you go into thinking about who are your partners, what's a win-win for them and for you. All right, what falls out? What is missing? What do you not have when you do all of that? That's what you're going for in your funding. And then you look for it through searching for grants and searching in different ways through your network, your outreach units, and an online search and other types of connections. So that's where we are now. I'd like for you to take a little bit of time, reflect on that, work through the two documents that you have. The first is the SMART Goal handout. The second one is the partnership matrix. There's a third one that I want you to pull up, and that's called Assessing an Opportunity. And assessing an opportunity is basically a checklist to help you when you start going through and looking for grants. So you're going to look at that sheet, and it gives you some questions. Things like, do you qualify for that grant? Yes or no? Does that funder meet your mission? Yes or no? Are you eligible for this funding? Yes or no? And so on and so forth. And what you do is, if it's a yes, you hit yes, and you keep searching to that funder. If it's a no, move on. Don't quit. Don't keep doing it, right? You have to, when you're doing this stuff and you're searching for funding, it's really important to keep going, keep looking in places that are helpful, but don't waste your time. There's lots of ways you can chase rabbits here of, oh, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. And then you end up spending a lot of time without a lot of answers. Be focused. Use that assessing the opportunity worksheet as a way to really help you and guide your search. And ultimately, when you're searching for grants, if you could have 3 to 5 funders that you feel like you could really lean into looking deeply into, pursuing, that's good. You don't have to have a list of 15 to 20. Go with 3 to 5. It's not overwhelming. Work with those 3 to 5. See what happens and keep going. Keep that list 3 to 5, 3 to 5, 3 to 5. If you try to do a lot more than that, it does become a lot. All right. It's a pleasure being with you. I'm going to stop this video, and I want you to take this time to reflect on what we've done so far. There will be a next video, and the next one is going to talk about logic models and evaluation and some of the pieces and parts of the grant process. So thank you again, Hunter Goodman, H. Goodman at uada.edu, H. Goodman at uada.edu. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you so much.